I guess I could tell you the outline of what I'm going to talk about, and then I'll just start when Charlotte gives me the okay. But I'm going to talk about just really first steps for people, or even people that haven't done this in a while, because, man, it's easy to dread having to make videos. None of us want to see ourselves on video. We think we sound funny, but that's actually the case for everyone in the entire world. Nobody likes seeing themselves. But I want to, I'll talk about narrowing down our topics, becoming comfortable in front of the camera, as clearly I am so comfortable here. And I'm going to just start. Here we go. Okay. First thing I want to talk about is narrowing down your topic. Okay. Each of these had a graphic with it, just in case I thought that Facebook flipped the images. So narrowing down your topic. The things I want to say about that are, I like to encourage people to choose. This is kind of like when you're first starting out. Think about the easiest possible thing for you to talk about, the most accessible, in other words, something you're really good at explaining, and also you can think about what are the FAQs that come to you all the time. My guess is that everybody has a handful of questions that people always want to know. How'd you get started? What do you do? Who else works with you? What's your pricing? So that's the first thing I recommend, is as you are narrowing down your topic, you think about the things that are the topics that come easiest to you, that are easiest for you to explain, that are the common questions that come to you. So I know that everyone, that's what this graphic is for. It represents all of your vast knowledge that you have. And so sometimes, having too much of something makes it hard to make a decision. But you don't have to, you can get to all that eventually. But for now, as you're choosing your topic, just think of, the smallest bite-sized piece that you can offer to somebody else. You don't have to show off and explain everything you know about your topic or your business, but just make it small. And then guess what happens when you have a really small thing? Then you have lots and lots of those to choose from eventually. But just for your first few, I want you to think about what's the simplest thing you can talk about. The next thing I want to talk about is becoming comfortable in front of the camera. Okay? Becoming comfortable in front of the camera. I don't know that most people, I don't think, ever do feel really comfortable in front of a camera. They just kind of learn to deal with it or learn to pretend like it's not there. So you're not alone by being uncomfortable. And, most people don't want to see what they look like. We think we look funny. We think we talk funny, but everyone thinks that about themselves. So here's a few tips, though, for being more comfortable in front of the camera. That you look at, I call it the eye, but look at the camera itself, because you can tell right now if I'm looking at the camera and now you feel like I'm talking directly to you, Bridget Sullivan, or if, I'm distracted by what's on the screen, it's just a little less engaged. So as much as you can look at yourself, that's really good. In fact, maybe even I should have something kind of blocking my face right now where I know that, okay, it's working, I'm on camera, but I don't need to be distracted by that. So anyway, look in the eye of the camera. Don't look at yourself. And another idea I've seen is, and I have done this before, is to tape a photo of someone. Maybe that is someone that you feel really comfortable with already. You could pretend like you're talking to them, but tape that photo of them right there next to the camera. So now I'm looking at this, we'll call it a photo of someone, and if I can imagine her and think about her, then it just comes out a little more naturally when I'm talking, because I'm like, okay, how would I word this so that it matches the way I like to explain stuff to this person that I know. So it can creep people out if they know that you have taken a photo of them and taped it next to your camera. So it's best not to reveal that. So those are my 3 things for getting more comfortable in front of a camera. As with everything in life, the more you do this, the easier it gets, the more natural it gets. But look at the camera itself. Try to hide your own image so you're not distracted by it, and put a photo of somebody next to the camera, so it's like you're talking to them. That's how an interview is. When we watch interviews, the person being interviewed, they're just having a conversation with the person who's interviewing them, and then the camera's there. So as we're sitting back and we're just viewing it, it's like we get to be there with that conversation. So same thing when you're making videos. It's like you're talking to one person, and other people get to kind of be in the place of that one person whose photo you have up there, and it's more personal that way. Another topic I want to talk about in our few minutes here is B-roll. So that's you very happy because you couldn't afford the $800 flight to the Paris airport, but you found B-roll online where other people have put their videos of landing in the Paris airport, and you can have that for free maybe, or for a few bucks, and you just saved yourself hundreds of dollars. So I'm self-taught. I started making movies in 2016, and I've completed 7 documentaries now. And I did not know about B-roll until a few days before my first movie was to be turned in. And man, that really helped a lot, because all I had was like a lot of people, maybe 10 people. This person's interview, then this person's interview, then this person's, just like what you see right here. This is a talking head where it's just the head talking. Well, it did spice things up a lot when I'm like, oh, well, this person talks about learning Spanish from a record, and I learned about B-roll. So I went online and found an image of a record player, and I just played that to break up to give us a break from looking at the person a little bit. So the other purpose of B-roll is to give you a chance when editing to cover up, like maybe this person's talking about how they got to Puerto Rico, and then they're talking about how they got to Florida. So 2 different things, and there's not an easy way to transition maybe, but showing that image lets you cut it so that, how sometimes you watch a YouTuber, they do what's called jump cuts, where they're over here and then the next second they're over here. Well, that's cool for YouTubers, but you don't really want that in your videos probably. So B-roll helps cover that up. I am currently obsessed with this show on Netflix called Last Chance U. And one thing that's a little annoying is a lot of times for B-roll they go for the most easy, obvious thing, which is like the person who's talking, to get a close-up of their hands. And, it's kind of boring. I've seen this dude's, especially binge watching stuff, you see patterns of how filmmakers do stuff, and I'm tired of looking at this one dude's hands. But anyway, so when it comes to B-roll, ideally you have your own that you're getting along the way. Or there's sites online where you can find B-roll, which include website called Pexels, another website called Stock Footage for Free. That sounds sketchy. Anytime there's a number like that, it looks a little sketchy to me, but it's not. So, those are free resources, but of course, if you're willing to pay, there's lots of great stuff out there too. So that's a little bit about B-roll that can spice up and add some action. So even when you're interviewing a person, maybe they're talking about water skiing, but you can't really get them water skiing. Well, maybe they have some footage of themselves water skiing, or you could even, just have a shot of their water skis or something, or photos of them on the wall water skiing, just to mix it up. So that's just a little bit about B-roll. Next, I want to talk about editing. So I think there's only one way to learn how to edit, and that is by editing. Can anyone guess what that image is? I'm going to look over here at the comments, which I have not been following. Can anyone guess? Okay, good. Bridget can vouch for Pexels. Cool. Thank you. I'm glad you like the illustrations. Anybody want to guess? All right, I'll spoil it for you. This is a puzzle. So editing, I'm not even going to say it's a puzzle. I don't know why I drew that, because the way I usually explain editing is, it's like if all of us here right now were given the same stack of 10 magazines, 10 copies of the same magazines, and someone said, hey, make a collage for us. Well, if you've ever paid, way too much for what people charge for those vision board experiences, you know that everyone comes up with a different collage, even if we all start out with those same magazines. So it depends on, well, how big is the paper I'm putting the collage on? Is it this big? Is it this big? What's the theme? What am I trying to convey? Who's going to see this? What's it for? So all of us would come up with our own collages, and that's what editing is. We sit back and we consume media and we just kind of accept it as it is and we get lost in the story. But the fact is, there were many, many, many decisions that were made all along. And I edit my own stuff, so I think that editing is really where most of the power comes from. Because, you might be handed that, quote, stack of magazines to make a collage out of. Well, okay, maybe somebody else made those magazines, but really, you're the one that's going to be making this final product of the video. So when I tell you to learn to edit, that might be intimidating because you've never done that before. But I just got to say, the only way to learn editing is to edit. And I've got a few resources for you if you haven't edited yet. I'm not an Apple person, but maybe you are. And if so, you probably have iMovie on your computer. There's Adobe makes something called Spark. It might be an app you can have on your cell phone as well as on the computer. In fact, I think it exists online. So I don't know how that works. I guess in the cloud you can edit. And then actually I use this thing called Power Director, which is about $100 to buy, and it's always been able to do what I needed it to do for my movies. So, and I can tell you how to get a free version of Power Director, but it will have a watermark on it, but at least you can get started. But honestly, learn how to edit. I know that YouTube has some new features now, and so maybe you can edit through YouTube a little bit, but really, if you can get used to using these other things, you'll see that the sky's the limit as far as what you're able to create. Also, when it comes to editing, if you're just getting started and you're scared to death, at least lob off those first few seconds, where you're adjusting the camera and stuff, and then maybe lob off the last couple seconds where you forget to turn the camera off, and then you remember, and then you fiddle with it. So at least lob off that front and back. But really, editing, I love editing. I've never experienced something like that where I can just get lost for hours and hours. And typically, when I'm in an editing mode, it takes me a few months, and I like to be in like a very dark, quiet, peaceful room with the white noise machine going and just like totally into it. But you don't have to edit for months and months. I'm talking about sorting through 20 interviews to make a 30-minute movie. But for these videos, it might take a few hours. Maybe it will take, in the beginning, it might take you like 5 or 6 hours to edit to get one good minute. But over time, you'll get faster. But really, you learn editing by editing. And as with everything else, you can Google every question you have on YouTube. There's some generous nerd out there that has answered questions already. So the last thing I'm going to mention, and then we'll see what questions you guys have, and I have some homework for you. But the last topic is music. I didn't really make short videos in the beginning. I really started by making pretty long little movies, like 15 to 30 minutes. And in the beginning, I just found music off of this resource called Free Music Archive. So these are the three sources for music I want to talk about. Your musician pal, your ex-boyfriend, find him on Instagram. I know you already know his handle. FMA, that stands for Free Music Archives, or YouTube, again, through their editing, they have like lots of free music on there, but you know what that sound is like when the person you live with is in the other room and you can tell they're watching a YouTube video because it's like that same repetitive instrumental music. You know, I think it's better to get music elsewhere because you hear the same stuff a lot. But Free Music Archive, I've gone on, in the beginning, I went on there to find music. I think the first time I did this, I just kind of found music and applied it to the movie. And then the second movie I made, I asked a composer whose music I liked on there if he wanted to score a movie. And in like 4 or 5 days, this guy did it. And I never had met him before in my life. So that was cool. Or a musician pal. Now these are for like longer videos. But also your musician pal or Free Music Archives, you might want to find a little jingle for the beginning of your videos or the end where you show your logo, even if it's just a few notes. Like, remember the bass line on Seinfeld when they change? I never even watched Seinfeld, but I know that sound when they go from one scene to the next, that little bass line. Or anything, any little jingle that your favorite YouTubers all have their songs. So that's just a little something that you can have to spice things up, even if you don't have music throughout your whole thing. So a little review here. What we talked about were about narrowing down your topic. So go with what is easiest for you to talk about. Maybe look at the most frequently asked questions people have of you and make little videos starting with those few things. Becoming more comfortable in front of the camera. I think a helpful thing is to cover up your face so you're not watching yourself, and to put up a picture of someone you know, even if it's a stick drawing to start with, but put that next to the camera and that represents that person so it's more like you're talking to them. I also mentioned B-roll, and I mentioned, there we go. So I mentioned B-roll, either make your own, like, even if it's simple, like in the beginning, I was interviewing this woman and realized I needed B-roll. So I just filmed her as she got into a car, and then we were driving through Charleston. She was like 85 and had started a homeless shelter down there and actually blew through every stoplight. And that was all on camera. But I just filmed Charleston as we were driving around. It wasn't great footage, but at least I had something. And you know what? I forgot to turn my camera on during the interview. So I was able to capture the audio from my separate audio device, but I did not have any video of this lady except for those first few seconds before I thought I'd turn the camera on when I turned it off, and us being in the car together. But I ended up just putting that together, and it was better than nothing. So anyway, B-roll is important. We also talked about learning to edit by editing. It's not rocket science. It's really not. Any question you have, you can find answers to on YouTube. And then the final thing is adding music. So that's kind of a quick overview. The purpose has been to talk about making like engaging videos. I'm going to read some comments here. So please feel free to ask anything, or add what you want. I'll read that out loud. And thank you guys for coming to this. I live just a few minutes from Advent, and I have been there a couple of times lately. It misses everyone. Yep, learn editing by editing. I have taken classes on it, and but really just by doing it, and then as stuff comes up, I don't even know what to ask. So it often when I'm doing something new, it's by doing it that I realize what I don't know, and then I go look for an answer to that. Let's see. Yes, correctly guessed that it was a puzzle. Thank you for your participation in that. Yeah, putting a photo of somebody is a good idea. I actually haven't done that in a long time, but I think I'm gonna start again because it's so even on these Zoom calls we're all doing, it's tempting to just look at the screen the whole time, but to actually look up, at least maybe when we're speaking, we should try to do that. That's a good tip, Julie. Thank you. What are strategies I use while filming to make the editing process easier on myself? I like to give myself a challenge so that I'm afraid of going through my footage for months and months. But that was the old me. The new me, well, one thing I should mention is as people get more confident and better at making videos is you want to record your audio separately from your video always, because your audio recorder, you're going to be able to place it more intentionally, maybe closer to the person, and hopefully it's audio gear that's made to record audio. Sometimes, though, that might mean you're using your phone, which is, made for audio. And you want to record the person's audio separately from your video. Your video using a consumer grade camera, like we're probably all using our video cameras, they also record audio. And when you edit, you push one button and the little waves that you recorded of sound only find the little waves from your sound and video file, and then they can line up really quick. So that's good. What video formats do you recommend the best ones to edit from? I just shoot. I guess they're MP4s when I put them into my editing software, but then my editing software turns it into its own thing that. So actually, when editing, from what I understand, it's like it's like I have the file, like the original file here, the shot, and it's saved. And so in the editing program, it's more like as I cut that up, I'm not cutting up the actual file, I'm cutting up like a representation of the file or something. And so this representation within the editing software just points back to that original thing. Because with a click of a button, I'm able to expand it or cut it or change it or make it all restore itself. So it's like that easy to work with. But it's pointing to this actual file that exists somewhere in outer space with ET. Did I mention editing software? Thank you for asking that. I use something called Power Director. These are the ones I recommend. Adobe has a free one called Adobe Spark. If you have an Apple computer, then you have something called iMovie probably for free already on your computer. So I use Power Director. Let's see. Any other questions, you guys? You have a minute and a half. This is something I didn't know about either. I was very ignorant when I started all this in 2016. Hard drives, very important for always backing up your work, of course. Also, like SD cards are really just meant for temporary storage. I did not know that either. So I had a whole lot of SD cards full of information, but now I see them now as a temporary place. It's in my camera. I record to it, and then I put it in my little SD card holder on the side where I know that's where I need to take material off of that and put it on my hard drive as soon as I get home, clean the SD card, and put it back. Of course, I do that every time. I'm very on top of that. Any other questions, you guys? What else can I show off? There's free editing stuff for your phone. Power Director has a free editing version for your phone. If you're going to buy one app for your phone, I do not own this, but I've heard legit filmmakers swear by it. Oh, after I show you this, I'm going to tell you some sites online that I like. But anyway, it's called Filmic Pro. I think it's about $15 to get the like paid app on your phone. But I'm told this makes your phone be able to take really great images. So some resources I like are this podcast called The Documentary Life. They've made like 150 episodes. Their most recent ones were about including music, actually. And there's a website called No Film School. And there's a website, I think it's a website or podcast called Film Riot. And the one I've referred to the most over the years probably is called Indie Film Hustle. So there's just so much great free stuff out there. So any tips for getting subjects to open up in interviews? I'll just make that my last question. Yes, it's really a conversation between you and that person. So you need to do whatever you can to have your ducks in a row so that you're not stressed out. You need to come to that meeting with them yourself being very relaxed, and it's all about hospitality. You're creating an atmosphere of hospitality, even though it doesn't mean they're coming to your house to hang out, but in that little space, even if it's in their house, it's up to you to create this warm, comfortable environment for them where they feel safe and comfortable, and where it feels like they're just having a conversation with you and not with all the thousands of people that are going to see this eventually. So that's pretty much what I have for today. Thank you guys for listening. If anybody has questions, of course, you can always find me, Charlotte Unconventional Film School. I'm on Twitter way too much. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook intermittently. I'm on LinkedIn strategically, so you can find me in those places. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has after this. You can find me online, and I'm happy to share. And I taught myself, and I'm not a super high-tech person, so don't think the technology is going to be too much for you. See you later. I don't have any bumper music.